Have you wondered what does it look like to have a handful of homeschool graduates and to be on that other side and understanding what actually is important when it comes to the homeschool? Yeah, sure, there are the academics, but there's other aspects that are more important. And what if you had that solid foundation? Today's guest, Meg Thomas from Call to Homeschool, is here to encourage you. I was encouraged by this conversation. She is so sweet, so knowledgeable, and has taken the time to really look at herself and how am I homeschooling and what is important. And she's going to encourage us right here on this episode right now. So stick around. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening. Welcome to today's podcast episode. I am really excited to be joined here by Meg. So welcome to the episode here today, Meg.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to hear all that you're going to share and also just to kind of get to know you a little bit better. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand, so that's been really fun. I'm excited for the audience to hear more about you as well. So can you just jump in and share a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Meg. I live in Utah and I have 7 children. And that has been quite an adventure with homeschooling that many kids. My oldest 4 are now homeschool graduates. I know a lot of people love to see somebody with a homeschool graduate to make sure that things worked out. So I love to interview them and ask them fun questions. So I have 1 child married and then 1 serving mission for my church and another one's about to go on a mission for our church. Oldest one's working, going to school. And then my last 3 are at home still homeschooling with me. And so I was going to just say how many years we've been like traditional, like homeschooling, but my girlfriend actually goes off from her oldest child for how long they've been homeschooling. She's like, I was homeschooling since they were babies. So technically then I've been homeschooling for almost 23 years.
Yep. And a lot of probably juggling a lot of things that you've learned. And I'm excited to hear just a bit more about you and just the balance of that. And just overall, you have all of these years of experience. And I think it's so valuable to be able to, like you were saying, talk to moms who have finished the race to a degree with some of their kids and are still a bit in the trenches. So I know that you speak a lot. I know you have a podcast. I know you speak a lot too and hear a lot from homeschoolers and encourage them. Why is homeschooling so hard for some families?
One of the reasons is definitely trying to recreate school at home, right? The public school model was created for a very different group of people, right? I know here in Utah, there's a large population of youth and children. So it's very common to have a class with 35 kids in it. So just very big classrooms. And so trying to create this bell and system, sit down, be quiet, no talking while you're running a home just doesn't work, right? I know during COVID, I don't know if you saw this too, but people are like, here's a printout of ideas for everybody who's homeschooling now. It was like 9 a.m. do this, 9:30 do this. And I remember emailing one cute lady because she wasn't a homeschool mom. She just was trying to help people. And I go, oh, my good friend, like this will backfire so terribly. Trust me, like I would be happy to give some free help, whatever. But she was like, I think it'll be great. And then obviously it fell apart quickly thereafter. So I think a big part is trying to recreate school at home and even trying to fill those hours, 6 to 7 hours a day. So I've done so much research of how much time of actual learning happens in the public education setting. So why homeschoolers can do it so much quicker is because we don't have you might have some behavior issues, but you don't have as big of a classroom to deal with disruptions. And we got to deal with this problem and this problem, right? We can just get in and get the meat done. So that's one of the big issues I've seen is just trying to recreate school at home. And then the second piece is I think we're losing the art of how to be together as a family all day. And I think that's a lot of moms are like, I can't stand being with my kids, or how, and not everybody, and I understand everybody needs a break. So don't think I'm trying to say anybody's a bad mom or anything like that. Not anything like that. But like how to do the laundry and how to go grocery shopping and how to do your meals and clean your house and have a hobby and still date your husband. Like how in the world do you navigate those things? And so really finding them a rhythm and a dance and helping you learn how to be together as a family so that you can continue to homeschool.
And what you're mentioning are two opposing, I mean, maybe that's kind of a harsh word to say, but that's two opposing views of just recreating the school at home and then learning how to live as a family. And I think we are very disconnected because in our culture, in our society, we don't know what that looks like anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're that far removed from generations that have been doing the school system that we don't know what that looks like to function in a family and everybody being a part of the family all day long, every day in and day out, and being able to guide them and shepherd them. And like you're mentioning about, we all have to work together to get the laundry done and get the cleaning done and get the grocery shopping done. And especially as kids get older, they can take such a big part in all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think I completely agree that that's what makes it hard for families, that we're trying to model and recreate something that's maybe works in a brick and mortar with the bells that you were mentioning, but it doesn't work when it is a family. Did you ever hear back from that mom when you suggested maybe not to follow the schedule?
I think I had offered, because it was another life coach. And so I think I had offered something, but I didn't have a certification they wanted me to have. So they were like, oh, if you had this certification, we would have, but you don't. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But maybe just pull out of the homeschool arena then, because like, I'm not going to teach you how to I don't know how to do a great schedule if your kids are in school all day. I'm not your person to go to, right? Because that's never been my life. So it was just, she was cute and polite, but it was just like, oh no, never mind. Thanks anyway.
Okay. Yeah. When it comes to homeschooling, you don't need any certifications. You could just be a mom that homeschools and you learn as you go. And so as we get in a little bit deeper here too, we're going to learn a lot from you and from all that you have been doing. So even you're talking about your friend and how long we've been homeschooling. Well, it's the age of your oldest child, but then I would say take that from each of your kids and like add them all together. Because they're all so different, and you're parenting very different children and home educating very different children as well. So what is a simple tip to help homeschool feel easier for the mom?
Allow me to share one of my favorite quotes. Let me grab it real quick. Sorry, I thought I had it already. Well, I'll just have to summarize it because I'm not seeing it right now. But it's a Charlotte Mason quote, and it was, "The mother who takes pains to endow her children with habits secures for herself smooth and easy days. But the mother who doesn't," and I don't know the quote exactly right, but it has endless friction with the children. So I always have people start with habits. Well, relationship first, connection, right, with those, and really build that relationship with your kids, but then to work on those habits, because we always want to dive in. We're so worried about reading, and we're so worried about math. And I'm like, they'll get it. Trust me. Your kid will eventually want to read. Your kid will eventually know these things. But if you're trying to keep your home going and there are no good habits working in your home, there's no rhythm. There's no when we get up, a consistent schedule. How does breakfast look? Are you making all the meals and then cleaning up all the meals? And then you're going and vacuuming the whole house. Like, you're going to run yourself ragged. So I love just in that very beginning part with homeschool, even a day a week or a big chunk of every morning of like, we run the house first. And really getting those habits. And as somebody who's now, I still have a 7-year-old, but as far as my big kids, I've secured for myself smooth and easy days because my husband and I can just go on a trip now. We can leave or go do something. If I'm in here right now, right? And I know the kitchen is clean, or I work one afternoon a week and I just know my house can go and flow because I've taken the pains to secure those habits, which are also habits of doing your schoolwork, which are also habits of whatever you need in your home. And when you have those thriving habits, homeschool gets to just be fun.
Charlotte Mason is so good with the habits. I so appreciate all that she has shared, and then that also homeschoolers have gleaned and have shared, whether on podcasts or in blogs or on social media. And I've grown and learned a lot from that. And it's so right that if you have those habits and you have those things in place. Did you find that it was hard to establish those habits, especially when they were younger?
I think it's so interesting. So my first 5 kids are born 6 years apart. So when I started homeschooling, I had a 6-year-old down to a newborn, right? So it was already chaotic. And I think a lot of times from chaos, you either let it consume you or you create from it, right? And so I was in this state of chaos with so many little kids, multiple diapered babies, right? Just everybody was so close in age that it was almost out of necessity that we just do all of these things. And so even my big kids will remember when we did all of our laundry together and we just dumped everybody's in a humongous pile on the kitchen floor and everybody sorted it. And then they weren't tall enough to switch loads. So I would switch the loads and then we all folded it together and all put it away. And every week, like clockwork on Mondays, we just did that. And it's so great now because now, like, we've just kept those habits going. So even my 7-year-old can sort his own clothes. I do have to switch loads for him, but he can then put it all away. So I only do my husband's laundry, my laundry, and then I kind of assist the 7-year-old, and everybody else does it by themselves. Same things with the bathroom, same things with cooking, same things with yard work, right? We just did it together and we learned how to really work together to get it all done and then allowed them to keep those awesome habits going.
And when mom and dad are involved, or mom or dad is involved, it's not like you're telling them, go out there and rake all the leaves up and they're out there and the weather's terrible and you're ignoring them and not feeding them. You're out there with them and showing them. And I know for myself as well, it's just, it took me being a part of it and doing it over and over and over again. But you're reaping that reward now of that time.
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought that up because doing it with them, I think is the easiest way to get it going because and I think that's part of the art we're losing of being together is like, we just want to bark orders. We want to treat children like an employee, like, go get me that spreadsheet, go make your bed, right? Like it doesn't work with children. And so actually going down into the room with them, up into the room, wherever the room is, right? And going in and like, let's learn how to make a bed. Let's do it together. And then you keep doing it together until they're like, let me try by myself. And it's amazing. And it's funny because the same thing works for homeschool too, right? Like you do everything together and then it's like, let me try some of this by myself. And it's just slowly helping them to become independent instead of like, I've done everything for you, or I've never really taught you. And now you're 18 and moving out of the house and you have no idea how to help, like take care of yourself or do all of these things. So to me, it's really helping my kids have, not only does it help my home run smoother, but it also is leaving my kids with tools to be successful as an adult.
And your point of the habits, establishing those habits and having your household to work well and smoothly does then pour into homeschool. If they learn to be disciplined and diligent and to do their best job that they can on folding the laundry, that will then carry into, hopefully, into the math lessons. And it's just as doing the homeschool and doing it together and seeing that we're all doing this. It's not just the kids, one or two kids sitting at the table having to do it and the rest all don't, unless they're too young or they're older and they graduated. But that it's an entire lifestyle. And I like that you've brought that point up.
And I think that's true for anything that when people become successful with something, right? So somebody who's successful with their health, they've made it a lifestyle. They're not really on a quote unquote diet anymore. They just eat that way, live that way, move their bodies that way. Somebody who's successful in their finances, they have awesome little habits that they just live a certain way. And the same thing with this homeschooling. It's just our lifestyle. That school is in our summertime, our school's like 15, 20 minutes. And then in the school year, it's maybe an hour, maybe two, but it's just pretty minimal. But we're always learning. We're always exploring, creating, doing these habits. And it's just part of our lifestyle. So I don't get pushback or the fighting and the whining and the complaining because it is just how the Thomas family runs and how we work.
And you have that relationship as well that you mentioned earlier, that have that. They have that part. They know that you care and they know the whys of why you're teaching and you have that connection. And again, you're not just barking orders. You guys are doing things together. So something that you probably hear, and I know too, when there are moms that are thinking about homeschooling and they think, I'm going to lose my mind. How can you homeschool without losing your mind in the process of it?
Yes, it is interesting. I think this one is something that's so overlooked, but it's taking care of mom's basic needs. And it's so funny because think of when you have a new baby and you're so sleep deprived and everything and everybody's driving you crazy. It's just, you're so tired, right? But sometimes by just taking care of those basic needs, what I like to call it is opening your window of tolerance, right? So kids are kids. They make noises, they make messes, they draw on things you didn't want to draw on. They break stuff, right? Like they do things like that. And when we have this really small window of tolerance, all of those things are really annoying and all of those things really irritate us. But when we take care of our basic needs with sleep, with water, with good food, moving our bodies, breathing, whatever that looks like for you, but those basic fundamental needs, it opens up that window of tolerance. And so you can roll with things. So they can still be a kid, and let's say they break something, right? So when your window of tolerance is open, it's like, oh, whoopsies, let's clean it up. Or if they're a big kid, like, oh, whoops, darn it, will you please clean that up? It doesn't become the end of the world. So when I see so many people, like, because I teach this all the time of this window of tolerance. And so people are like, yeah, I get that. And then they'll go a couple weeks and they're like, okay, so I just started paying attention that, like, a lot of homeschool moms I find don't eat. Like, so they'll like, I got to serve everybody. I got to take care of everybody. And so they're so hungry and angry that they're just so quick to get mad, quick to get snippy. So when I'm working with a client, I'm like, just trust me, try this for a week or two, or just notice, write down how much sleep you're getting and notice your mood the next day. So just by taking care of your basic needs allows you that window of being able to roll with things, to not go to complete loss of tears. And it doesn't mean you always have to be perfect, because you are human and you're probably going to have a bad day. But as you get more recognition with this, I've even noticed sometimes with my kids, I'll say, oh, my window's small today. So we can take teasing your sibling into another room, because my window of tolerance is a little small today. I didn't get a lot of good sleep last night, or I had this thing happen. And so it helps them to also be understanding, like, oh, when I'm tired, I also maybe need to slow down a little bit, or if I need something to eat, and just really start becoming in tune with your body, so that life, you don't feel so reactive to all the day-to-day things that children just do.
That part about eating and not taking care of ourselves completely resonates with me. That was me. And so I didn't have the verbiage that you have of the window of tolerance. So my window of tolerance was very small most days when my kids were young and I was homeschooling them, because I did not feel myself up well. I did not eat well, and I know I wasn't sleeping well. And I look back now, I'm like, yeah, your blood sugar just continued to drop and you're hungry. So you're hangry all the time. And that is a change that I have made. And I do talk about that here on my podcast. So listen, whoever's listening, it's not just me saying it, Meg saying it as well.
Yes, I just see it happening so many times. Or even if you watch yourself, like if we're out too long in the day and we haven't had lunch or something, and I'll just be driving in the car like, when did my kids get so annoying? Like, they're driving me crazy. And then I eat something and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine. Like, you guys are just being kids. It was me. Right.
Right. And it's kids just being kids, and understanding that they're going to be noisy, that they're going to be messy, they're going to be loud, there's going to be drama, there's going to be stuff that comes up. But how can we, so it sounds like you're saying, how can we fuel ourselves up so that we can then manage and handle that well? And on those days that we get up and we know, I like that you have that communication with your kids and you let them know beforehand that it's not necessarily them, it's you. You've had a lack of sleep, you've just had stuff going on or whatever it is, and you can communicate that to them. That's great.
Yeah, it's just helpful. I love to keep the peace as much as possible. So anything to keep the peace.
No, that's good. And it's a good communication too. And it probably also will help them for other relationships outside of the home. And then eventually also relationships as they have relationships and want to get married. And so I'm thinking, future husbands or wives, that they then can have that understanding as well. And so you're equipping them for that, instead of being like, why is she out of control, or why is he like this?
Yeah, well, I love it. I know you have teens as well. And so I don't know if you've seen, but I see a lot of teens who don't take care of their basic fundamental needs, right? Especially in summertime, they'll stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning and get up whenever. They're on a screen a lot. They're just eating a lot of junk food. And then these teens are super depressed. And so I've seen, just even modeling it for my children, what it's done for my teens. So I guess some of them are in their 20s now, right? But 6 of my kids are teenagers plus. And so just watching them, sometimes we're all in bed by 9:30 at night, because they understand, like, oh, I have a long day tomorrow. I just don't think it's good for them to be staying up really late all the time, just to their own mental health, their own mood, their ability to regulate their emotions, their own window of tolerance. So by modeling it, then a lot of times they will copy that behavior. And just seeing my teens be able to navigate just troubles with puberty and teenager what is it, teenagerdom? I don't know the right word there. And just coming and got on top throughout it.
I completely agree. And I'm so glad to hear somebody else. Like I'm a stickler about bedtime. I always was like that because I need sleep and I recognize that that's something that I need. And so even my teens, now that I have two young adults, I'm kind of like, all right, one doesn't live at home right now. So I don't know how late she's staying up but she knows. And then my 19-year-old, he's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit with running his business and I have conversations, but I can still guide and direct and model a bit more to my youngest. And we'll hear about kids on different sports teams and how they're up super late. And he's gotten texts from friends at like 1 or 2 in the morning. And these are kids that go to school. This will be on like a school night and he'll get a text from them. And he has to turn his phone in by a certain time. It's turned into me. So he doesn't have access to it. But when he turns it on the next time, it shows what time they texted at. And I do a lot of that reverse kind of engineering. Like we have a big day tomorrow. So we need to get to bed on time because you want to be feeling your best to be able to do this. Or maybe there's mornings that we have to get out early to get somewhere. And what can we do to prep breakfast beforehand and prep lunch and that kind of stuff. So good. I like to know that I'm not the only one. So I can say to him, look, I'm not the only mom.
It's funny. I think with my oldest, when he did move out, I think he did try like watching TV every night and staying up really late. And he just said this the other day when he was over, because somebody goes, if I could do anything I wanted, I would watch TV every single day. And he looked at me and goes, I thought so too. After 3 days, it's the worst thing ever. It's so boring. And I was like, okay, good. So like these habits that I was really trying to instill in him, he went out and then he was like, I'm going to stay up late and I'm going to do all this stuff. And he realized, I don't like the way I feel. This is not a high quality of life, right, for him. And so it was interesting to have him as a young adult to keep a bunch of these habits I tried to instill in him.
And he had to go out and try it. I remember trying things too. My parents saying not to do something or to whatever it was. And I pushed the boundaries and then realized, oh, that's not really the best way to live. I don't feel that great when I do that. Or like your son you're like, well, he was probably watching way too much TV and was up way too late and felt pretty cruddy then for those couple of days. So they try it and they're like, oh, mom wasn't really wrong.
Yeah.
So you've been homeschooling for a while. I'd love to hear what you would do differently if you were given a do-over.
That is such a good question. I love that we worked so much on habits. That one, like I would keep that one every time. The one that I figured out a little bit later was how important relationships were and are. And so I'm sure I was just more snippy. I definitely had to work on being less critical of just that like impatience of trying to go faster and whatnot. And with my last kids, I get to work on, I always am working on relationships now, but I really dive in with it, those younger ones. And so with the older ones, I would have focused with relationships so much more of that connection piece and then guiding versus trying to force a certain way or push into a certain mold or anything like that. We did a lot of fun stuff. And so I definitely would keep all of that. We went outside to the mountains almost every week. I'm actually not as good with that now because sometimes, I don't know about you, but as kids leave, sometimes it's hard for me to like, well, if only one of you can come, then I'm like, oh, so that's a little tricky for me. But we did a lot of fun stuff like that. And it's funny because one of the things I did do back then is I'd put in a lot of effort into like an activity or a craft, and my kids don't remember those things. And so I don't know, like, obviously we're always doing school and I'm always teaching my kids, but doing those really big, extensive crafts that's like me up all night creating something or running to the store or ordering stuff off Amazon, I realized that those things they forget them. And I'd put in so much work and time and energy. So instead of me coming up with ideas of things, I found it's better to allow them the creativity because then they're going to do it in a format that speaks to them, that they enjoy. And then I'm not stressing myself out like, where are the sparkly buttons? I need sparkly buttons for this craft or whatever it would be, right? So definitely sometimes I'd get really hung up on handwriting or something. I'm just like, it needs to look this way. Or we do Magic C, right? And it has to look exactly like this. And so I've realized so much of those things just don't matter. That a kid will learn to write. And as an adult, handwriting looks very different. And I don't know why we decide when they're children that needs to look a certain way. And then adults were like, it's fine. You did your best, right? So definitely letting a lot of those things go and focusing on relationships.
That's so perfect. I love all of that. And I completely agree with all of that. And you've had a lot of years of homeschool. And I think that's really something that moms need to take to heart. And it's hard because we think that, oh, well, it worked out okay for her, but for me, I need to focus on the handwriting. Like you're talking about the handwriting. I was like that too. I was like, you have to get the handwriting. Now I'm kind of like, all right, you got chicken scratch. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, honestly, at some point I just gave up with the handwriting. I'm like, you do know how to write, and you'll get by. And if you need to write better for something, they'll learn to write better.
Yeah. Well, and I love too, one of my kids, I can't remember how they hold the pencil, but they hold it like really, really different. And this was one of my darlings that was my best teacher because he would question everything. And so I'm like, all the books say you have to hold a pencil a certain way. And I would try to get him to do it. And he was like, but it hurts my hand, or I don't like it. And when I let go of that, then he could flourish and he could write. And there's an artist I like on Instagram, and he talks about that he, quote unquote, holds a pencil wrong, right? And now he's this brilliant artist, all while teachers were telling him, it actually killed his creativity while he was in the public school system because they wouldn't let him hold the pencil the way that was comfortable to him. And we forced him. And so as an adult, he was like, I'm going back in and I'm going to hold it the way that's comfortable to my hand. So we love to tease my son because I don't even understand how you could hold a pencil the way he does it, but it works for him. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's like trying to force a left-handed kid to hold like a right-handed kid, right? And it's uncomfortable and it doesn't work for them, but allowing working with your kid instead of thinking everybody has to learn on this little conveyor belt. And it's like, no, we're all individualized, amazing humans. Why don't we work with your strengths instead of trying to get everyone to conform?
That circles back to the beginning of our conversation about recreating the school at home. And we look at adults, and so you're talking about that artist that you follow that you really enjoy, and you're like, wow, you're so creative and you admire so many things. But then with kids, we're thinking they have to fit into a certain box. We admire these things, these quirky things in adults, but when they're kids, we say they have to fit into a box. Why don't we just let them do the quirky stuff when they're little too?
There's so many fears, and I know I've seen that with a lot of moms. I'm sure you have too, of these fears. I'm going to mess my kid up. I'm going to fail them. And it's like, trust me, if they can't hold a pencil, you have not failed them. The only way you can truly fail your kid is by not doing anything, completely giving up, or intentionally teaching them wrong on purpose to be mean. That's the only way that you could fail. But if you are trying and helping them and encouraging them and working with their strengths, you cannot fail.
This has been amazing information. I feel all pumped up and encouraged too. So thank you. Yeah. Where can the listener go to find out more about you, Meg?
So my website is coachmegthomas.com, and that is all my social media handles are all Coach Meg Thomas. And then my podcast is the only thing that's different, and that is called The Homeschool. So you can check me out in any of those places.
Perfect. And I will drop all of those links in the show notes. So thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Meg's mission is to encourage homeschool moms to make it fun and easy and to do it without yelling. She has an entire challenge, an entire way of encouraging you not to blow your top, not to lose your cool, and to be able to homeschool and parent your child in a way that you are not yelling at them. You're not raising your voice. And listen, I could have used some of that advice years ago. I'll just be completely honest with you. I love the way that she just is honest and just tells you about her journey and continues to encourage you through her podcast called Homeschool, which I will link in the show notes for you. So I encourage you to go over and listen to her episodes and get some good advice on just next steps, because she's been there, done that, and she's also still in the trenches. So I have appreciated this conversation with her, and I hope that you have as well. And I promise to be back here on this podcast again real soon. Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.